Well met adventurers, I am the Dungeon Master, and I bid thee welcome to a brand new Let's Play. Let's play Sentinels of the Multiverse, a comic book themed card battle game that was physically released in 2011 by Greater Than Games, also called Sentinel Comics, and later released on Steam in 2014 by Handle Labor Games. I actually played Sentinels of the Multiverse myself back in 2015, the physical card game, and I actually found it to be a rather enjoyable experience. The way this Let's Play is going to work is that I will be starting off with the Sentinels of the Multiverse core set, and then moving through each of the mini packs and expansions in turn, right up until the final expansion for Sentinels of the Multiverse, the appropriately titled Oblivion. The core set of Sentinels of the Multiverse contains 4 villains, 10 heroes, and 4 environments. The villains in the core set are Baron Blade, Citizen Dawn, Grand Warlord Voss, and Omnitron. Since we're going to be starting off with the core set, it's only fair to start off with the most notorious villain in the entire multiverse, which is the one and only Baron Blade. He has a difficulty rating of 1, meaning that he's a fairly straightforward villain, but by no means easy to defeat, as you will see in this video. Villains have a difficulty rating from 1 to 4, 1 being fairly straightforward and 4 being almost impossible to defeat, but not entirely unbeatable. And now we have to assemble a team of heroes to fight against Baron Blade. The team I'm going to use in this first video are a group known in the multiverse as the Freedom 5. The leader of the Freedom 5 is America's Finest Legacy, or Paul Parsons the 8th, as he's known. Legacy is actually an interesting character because the way that his powers work is that he inherits powers from the previous legacies, that is his father and his grandfather, but he also acquires, the next generation also acquires new powers of their own. He is basically the founder of the Freedom 5 initiative, and he's a good frontline fighter, but he also is a good team supporter. His second in command is the indestructible Bunker, whose real identity is Lieutenant Tyler Vance of the Ironclad Project. Basically, the Bunker suit is a chassis mech suit that is quite heavily armed and armored, as you will see. The third member of the Freedom 5 is Tachyon, the quickest woman on Earth, or Dr. Meredith Stinton. Basically, she is a scientist, and an experiment of hers went awry and actually gave her super speed, which is why she's called Tachyon, although she still enjoys doing scientific research. The fourth member of the Freedom 5, back when they were known as the Freedom 4, is the Wraith of Mystery Comics. Her real identity is Maya Montgomery, and she hails from the rather dark, grim city of Rook City. Basically, her backstory is that she and her boyfriend were assaulted in Rook City, and she was rendered unconscious, but her boyfriend was killed. And as a result, she took on the identity and persona of the Wraith in order to fight crime in Rook City, and later decided to take up Legacy's offer to join the Freedom 4. The fifth member of the Freedom 5 is my favourite hero in the whole game, and the one that I actually played back in 2015, which is Absolute Zero. This is no joke, his real name is Ryan Frost, and he does have a lot of ice puns to his credit, but he actually makes them come off as actually being rather somewhat humorous. Basically his backstory is that he was working as a janitor at a cryo facility one day when an accident happened and froze him, kind of like Mr. Freeze from Batman. He could only survive in Arctic temperatures until Tachyon decided to build a cryo chamber for him and was working on the suit that you see before you. Initially Ryan refused, but eventually he decided why not? It couldn't hurt to help out a team of superheroes, even if they were crazy. So he's working off to pay off the government's suit by working with the Freedom 4 as the final member of the Freedom 5. The environments, there's Insula Primalis, the city of Megalopolis, the ruins of Atlantis, and the Wagner Mars base. We're going to be fighting in the land of Insula Primalis. This is actually the how to play tutorial if you chose to click that option of Sentinels of the Multiverse, the video game. But because I'm going to be explaining everything anyway, I'm not going to do that. Going to be playing on standard. There are some other difficulty options: advanced, challenge, and ultimate. Standard is difficulty 1, ultimate is difficulty 4. Going to be playing on standard. So the Freedom 5 are going to face off against Baron Blade and Insula Primalis. And there's the nefarious Baron himself, taunting his archfoe Legacy, as always. And now we can actually get into the game. Although before that, I should explain a few things. First, a round of Sentinels of the Multiverse. The villain takes the first turn, because of course they do, because they're villains. Then the heroes get to counter-attack and mount an assault against the villains. And then finally the environment itself takes a turn. It's not just window dressing or background art. The environments in Sentinels of the Multiverse actually have a huge role to play, and generally not in our favor. I should also mention that the game is a fixed deck game, unlike Marvel's Legacy, which is entirely focused on deck building and customization. Villains get a deck of 25 cards each, heroes have a deck of 40 cards each, and environments have a 15 card deck each. Now, since it's the beginning of the game, Baron Blade gets to put one mobile defense platform into play from his deck. Baron Blade's plot is to try and pull the moon into the earth via his signature Terralunar Impulsion Beam, which activates if there are 15 or more cards in his trash, so we want to defeat him before that happens. When Baron Blade would be destroyed, his character card flips to the vengeful mad scientist side instead, so it's not enough to simply reduce his health from 40 to 0. With that out of the way, Baron Blade, there's his mobile defense platform, which renders him immune to damage. Devious Disruption, which is a one-shot that destroys any and all ongoing cards, and deals each hero 3 times 3 plus the amount of hero and ongoing and equipment cards still in play. So everyone's taking 3 lightning damage, except for Legacy, who takes 4. This is because Baron Blade and Legacy are nemesis, in which they deal an extra point of damage to each other. If a hero and a villain share the same icon, you'll notice that Legacy's icon there is on Baron Blade's character card. If a villain and a hero share an icon, they are considered nemesis and will do the an extra point of damage to one another. Now that Baron Blade's turn is over, the heroes can mass a counter assault. Heroes, they get 4 cards in their hand at the beginning of the game. They get to play a card, then use power if they can, and then draw a card at the end of their turn. However, if they choose not to play a card or use a power, then they get to draw an extra card at the during their draw phase. An interesting thing to note is that unlike other games, you don't lose by running out of cards in your deck. Basically, if your entire deck is in the trash, it gets reshuffled into a new deck. Have a quick look at these cards and give you a taste of what they look like. So, Legacy starts off with Back Fist Strike, Danger Sense, Heroic Interception, and Lead from the Front. Might as well deal some damage to the mobile defense platform, because we need to get rid of that if we are to actually start assaulting Baron Blade himself. Legacy's innate power is Galvanize, which increases damage dealt by hero targets by 1 until the start of our next turn. So everyone's going to be doing an extra point of damage, which is very useful. And Legacy drew Takedown, which is useful if we don't want Baron Blade to play any cards on his next round. Bunga has Decommissioned Hardware, Grenade Launcher, which is useful against multiple targets, Heavy Plating, and Turret Mode. We'll throw out the Grenade Launcher. Bunker's innate power is Initialize, which allows him to draw a card, and Grenade Launcher deals 2 targets 2 projectile damage, and a third target 1 projectile damage. So we're going to be dealing 3 projectile damage to the mobile defense platform, but because it's still out, Baron Blade is immune to damage, because he's protected by the force field, and we don't want to hit our own allies because that would be silly. And Bunker draws another Grenade Launcher, which is useful in case the one that we have gets destroyed. I should mention that each card has a keyword. There are 4 main keywords, which are one-shots, ongoings, equipments, and limited cards. One-shots get played, they resolve, and then go to the trash. Ongoings and equipment cards stay in play until they're destroyed. And limited cards, there can only be 1 copy of a limited card in play at any one time. Tachyon also has a special keyword in her deck, which is Burst, and she starts off with a Fleet of Foot, which is very useful. Supersonic Response, which is useful only if we can actually hit Baron Blade this turn. Synaptic Response, which is useful for redirecting damage, and another Synaptic Response. And we're playing the Fleet of Foot, so everyone gets to draw a card. Legacy gets Surge of Strength, which increases his damage. Bunker gets External Combustion, which is another good card. Sonic Vortex for Tachyon, which requires her to have as many burst cards in her trash as possible. Throwing Knives for the Wraith, and an Isothermic Transducer for Absolute Zero. We'll throw out a Synaptic Interruption. And we use her power, which is Rapid Recon. Basically, she gets to have a look at the top card of her deck and decide whether or not she wants to discard it. Only going to discard it if it's not useful or it's a burst card. We're going to get rid of Sucker Punch. So now we have 2 burst cards, and she drew another Sucker Punch anyway. Which is useful against targets with low health, but not really otherwise it's useful in the trash. The Wraith starts out with Mega Computer, Throat Jab, Throwing Knives, and two utility belts. The Wraith uses a lot of equipment cards to her advantage, and might as well throw out a utility belt, and then use the Wraith's innate power of stealth, which reduces the next damage dealt to her by 2. This actually stays in play until the next time she gets hit. So if she uses stealth 3 consecutive times, if she gets hit by the 3rd time, she will reduce the next 6 damage. But for now, she's only going to be reducing 2 damage, because she's only used stealth for the first time. And she drew a Trust Fund, which allows her to draw 4 cards and discard 2. And Absolute Zero starts off his turn with a Cold Snap, Focused Apertures, Glacial Structure, Isothermic Transducer, which he picked up from Tachyon, and Sub-Zero Atmosphere. This is why Absolute Zero is a complexity level 3, is because he requires modules in order to be effective because of his the way his power works. So we're going to put Isothermic Transducer into play and use his power of thermodynamics, which he deals himself either 1 cold or fire damage. He has another module called the Null Point Calibration Unit, which whenever he is dealt cold damage, he heals for that much damage instead. But since he has the Isothermic Transducer in play, he's going to deal himself 2 fire damage, which means that he can deal target some cold damage, which is just enough to get rid of the mobile defense platform. Which means next round we can finally start going after Baron Blade. And he draws a Coolant Blast, which will be fairly useful since he dealt himself fire damage this turn anyway. But now it is Insula Primalis' turn. And we have to destroy an equipment card. Anyone that doesn't destroy an equipment card has to gets dealt 5 fire damage. Vocrawl Bunker had the grenade launcher, Tachyon, the Wraith has her utility belt, and Absolute Zero would be perfectly fine. Actually, we're not gonna. Everyone's going to take 5 fire damage. This is actually beneficial for Absolute Zero since he gets to use the Isothermic Transducer again, and Tachyon's Synaptic Interruption will actually allow Baron Blade to take fire damage instead of her, which is very nice. Wraith only takes 3 damage because of stealth. And even though Absolute Zero takes damage, Baron Blade is going to be taking even more damage. So we've managed to deal quite a bit of damage to Baron Blade that turn. But Baron Blade is ready with a powered remote turret, which deals each of us 2 projectile damage. It increases damage by 1 for each mobile defense platform in play. Baron Blade has 3 mobile defense platforms at his disposal, 2 of which are still in his deck. So if all 3 of them were out, we'd be dealt 5 damage by now. But because it's just a remote powered turret, we're only getting hit for 2. So everyone takes 2 projectile damage. And the turn passes now to Legacy. Might as well throw out Takedown, just so Baron Blade can't play any cards next turn, although he will be dealing damage to Legacy as a result. And Legacy gets Fortitude, which reduces damage dealt to him by 1. It's fairly nice. But Legacy is still doing fine. Might as well use another might as well use an external combustion, so we can do some damage to the turret and Baron Blade. Not too worried at the moment about his Impulsion Beam activating, because he only has 2 cards in his trash, and we can get rid of the turret altogether, thanks to Legacy's Galvanize. And deal some damage to Baron Blade. If you want to know how the Freedom 4 kind of came together, I believe there's a comic on the Greater Than Games website. And there's a recharge mode, which is another mode card for Bunker. Supersonic response is useless because Tachyon hasn't been dealt damage this turn. I think we're going to throw out another Synaptic Interruption there and see what card is at the top of her deck. Yeah, we'll discard it, because Tachyon gets to draw Quick Insight instead, which is actually quite handy for getting more burst cards into her trash. Gonna use a Throat Jab on Baron Blade, which seems like the best idea, because now Baron Blade not only can he not draw cards, he can't deal damage. And the Wraith is going to use Stealth again to reduce the next 2 damage. And there's an Impromptu Invention, which is really useful in getting more equipment cards on the board. I'll throw out the Focused Apertures, which increases Absolute Zero's cold damage by 1. So we're going to use Isothermic Transducer again to deal some more damage to Baron Blade. And we get a Field Freeze for our trouble, which is very useful in destroying villain ongoing cards. Now, if everyone gets to discard 3 cards, the top 3 cards of their deck, we can destroy it. Yeah, why not? That's the price we pay for getting rid of River of Lava and Volcanic Eruption. Deals us 7 fire damage at the start of the environment turn. Baron Blade doesn't get to play a card this turn, so passes back to Legacy. Takedown's destroyed. Not gonna skip the rest of our turn. This Baron Blade is no, not Baron Blade. Legacy is going to throw out a Fortitude this turn and galvanize the team once more, and another lead from the front, which is useful in if any of your other heroes are low in health and Legacy has much higher health, he can take the damage. Bunker is not going to skip his turn. Um, don't want to play turret mode just yet. I'm going to throw out a heavy plating so that Bunker takes less damage, and also hit Baron Blade with a grenade launcher. And Bunker gets another recharge mode. Villains tend to be take quite a while to defeat. Videos could range from half an hour to over an hour. Tachyon is going to use her quick insight to draw some cards. Another sonic vortex. Another synaptic interruption. And a fleet of foot. You can get rid of the response and the sucker punch. Too bad I can't play that fleet of foot right now, but that's okay. Instead, Tachyon is going to draw Lightspeed Barrage, which is very useful. We don't want to discard that, because that deals the damage equal to the amount of burst cards in Tachyon's trash, which is why we've been discarding burst cards. Now Baron Blade can deal damage. The Wraith is going to use her impromptu invention to draw a grappling hook, which is useful for getting rid of an environment card. I think she'll throw out she'll equip herself with a Razor Ordnance, and she'll use a grappling hook to deal with the volcanic interruption. There are no copies of Obsidian Field in the environment trash, so that doesn't come into play, and the Wraith gets another throwing knives. And now with her Razor Ordnance, the Wraith can deal 4 projectile damage to Baron Blade, and also go stealthy again. As I said, Baron Blade is a fairly straightforward as far as villains go, and might as well throw out a Cold Snap so that Absolute Zero deals damage at the beginning of each of his turns. Deal some more damage. I should really try and get the module, the null calibration unit, at some point, so that I can actually start healing Absolute Zero. And there's another river of lava, which is rather unfortunate. So everyone's taking another 5 damage, except of course for Legacy and Bunker. Although Tachyon, using her quick thinking, can redirect the lava towards Baron Blade, which means that he flips to his the other side of his character card now. The Wraith, thanks to the power of stealth, gets only takes 1 damage there, and thanks to his isothermic transducer, Absolute Zero deals 7 damage to Baron Blade. Now Baron Blade plays Hasten Doom, which is not very nice, because he gets to play an extra card. Flesh Repair Nanites, he gets back 10 health, which is rather unfortunate for us. It means that damage that we dealt him before has done nothing. Now that Baron Blade is on the side, his max health is 30, and his trash got reshuffled into his deck, and all 3 copies of Mobile Defense Platform were moved to the trash. At the end of his turn, he deals the hero with the highest health 5 energy damage, which was Tachyon, as you saw. So we have just destroyed Baron Blade's Terralunar Impulsion Beam, so we no longer have to worry about that. Let's throw out a Surge of Strength for Legacy, and use Galvanize again. There's Thok, which allows Legacy to punch a target and also draw a card. I'll throw out turret mode in this case, so I can use an extra power and also deal an extra point of damage. So let's try this again. Stop dealing damage, and use Initialize to draw a card. I should also mention that Greater Than Games has a podcast known as the Letters page, which basically is kind of like a deeper insight into the lore of Sentinels of the Multiverse. Tachyon is going to use her Fleet of Foot. Legacy draws Flying Smash. Turret mode prevents Bunker from drawing cards. Actually, I forgot about that. Tachyon gets Pushing the Limits. The Wraith gets Throwing Knives. Absolute Zero gets Impale. Nice. Let's throw out Pushing the Limits, which allows Tachyon to play an extra card during her play phase and draw another extra card during her draw phase, but she has to deal herself 2 psychic damage. Tachyon has 11 burst cards in her trash, so we're going to be dealing 12 damage, which is quite a lot. So we've just halved Baron Blade's health, and Tachyon has HUD Goggles, which we definitely want to keep because that allows her to play another card, which goes quite well with Pushing the Limits. And a Nimble Strike. I'll throw out a Trust Fund so that the Wraith gets some more cards, and there's another Trust Fund, just in case. Another Impromptu Invention. Another Razor Ordnance. And a Stun Bolt, which deals the target 1 projectile damage, and damage dealt by that target is reduced by 1. And discard one of her Throwing Knives. Actually 2 of her Throwing Knives. And now Wraith is going to use her Razor Ordnance against Baron Blade for damage. And use the power of Stealth to blend in with the shadows. Smoke Bombs, which redirects damage from the lowest hero to the highest hero. And there's Cold Snap. Let's throw out the Coolant Blast because Absolute Zero has dealt himself 5 fire damage the last turn, which he is going to use to finish off Baron Blade once and for all. And with that, Baron Blade has been defeated. His plot to pull the moon into the earth has been thwarted, and the heroes of the Freedom 5 are victorious. So that was the first video of my Sentinels of the Multiverse Let's Play. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned to the second episode, in which I take on the next villain of the core set, which is Citizen Dawn, I believe. As always, I am the Dungeon Master. Until next we meet.